Ruchem Aboim B'Shem Hashem, B'Shem Irgin Shirator. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's shir from Rabbi Yakov says, Smith Shlita on Dine Muktza Mahmas Gufo, usable items that are Muktza. Tab's sponsoring a shir, call Irgin Shirator 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com. Rav Smith.
Today's sugya, besides being an important Hilchah Shabbos, also in a certain sense is out to help the Shalom Bayis continue into Shabbos, because these shilas come up that someone was supposed to put away the candles or the matches before Shabbos and they forgot, and now it's on the dining room table. The for the whole Shabbos is they're headed to move it off the dining room table. You don't like looking at candles or matches a whole Shabbos. Or someone left out the laundry detergent or the dishwasher detergent or the polish, the toothpaste, it's endless, the mop, the sponge. But if you notice in these few examples, we really touched upon 4 different categories that we have to discuss today. Because the candles and matches is a solid item, but it's not a typical keli that you use and reuse. A candle and match, you light it and it burns, and that's the end of it. Is a candle and a match considered a keli? How about laundry detergent, dish detergent? It's a liquid. Polish and toothpaste is a cream. A mop and a sponge is a keli mamish. So as you see, we have our work cut out for today to try to understand when you have something, a usable item that you don't use on Shabbos, and again, there are many more, but the point is, things that are usable, but you don't use on Shabbos, and now it's left out for Shabbos. Can you move it if it doesn't, if it disturbs you, it doesn't look Shabbos-dik having candles or a match on the table? So we need one yisoid, which, Bez Hashem, a simple yisoid that will give us information for the whole sugya. Let's say someone was creative, he bought a coconut l'kavod Shabbos. But it came Friday night and he realized that it doesn't fit into the nutcracker. So how do you open a coconut? It doesn't fit into the nutcracker. So the question is, can he go to his tool room and take a sledgehammer and smash open the coconut? So it sounds pretty not Shabbos-dik, but it's a very Mishnah. You're allowed to use a cornice, liftzayah by a goyzim. You're allowed to use a hammer, and there's no different sledgehammer or hammer to crack open a coconut. And this is quoted in Shulchan Aruch, Shin Ches Seif Gimel, which is the site of today. A kli shemalachte le'isa, which means you have a keli. A sledgehammer is a keli, although it's a brutal keli for binyan, but it's a keli. You're allowed to use the tzarech gufo, either to crack a coconut, or when you finish using the sledgehammer and you put it on the table, and now you need the place where the sledgehammer is occupying, you're allowed to put it back in the tool chest. So this is the side of kli shemalachte le'isa, l'tzarech gufo or makayim. Okay. Now consider the next question, a summer shaila. You're learning outdoors, whether it's in the mountains or in the city, a nice breeze, and the wind is blowing your pages. And you can't learn like this. Can you pick up a stone next to you, put it onto the Gemara, and the stone will hold down the pages? So it definitely sounds more kosher, a little innocent stone, than a sledgehammer. But yet we all know that that's not true. That a sledgehammer is mutlat tzarech gufo mekayim, and a stone, an innocent stone, is not so innocent as also. What's the chiluk? How do you understand that? The teretz for the yisoid for today, the key word is the word keli. The yisoid of muktzah means that it's segregated, it's set aside, you're not going to use it. You can't use something that's useless. You have eggshells, so it's not a keli because it's not useful. So eggshells is Muktza mahmas gufo, which means that the item itself is functionless, is useless, and therefore it's totally segregated from use. Now, a kli shemalachte le'isa, sledgehammer, has the main maila, it's a keli, as opposed to a eggshells. Now we understand that that's why a innocent stone is not so innocent, because a stone is also Muktza mahmas gufo. A stone is not a keli. So when it comes to a stone, ikke chasim in a seifa. A sledgehammer is a keli, and therefore malachta le'isa. A stone is not a keli, so there's no starting point, and therefore you can't use it even l'tzarech gufo. Now this is the Shulchan Aruch in Sif Zayin. Davar she'ein by shayches kli kagoin tzroires oyavonim amashal shayla You could use them. And the Ramah says, once we assume it's not a kli, it's muktzah machmas gufo, it's not a keli, then it's even asa l'tzoyre gufo u'makayim, and the svar is pashit. When something is a keli, you could use it in a heta oifen, a sledgehammer to crack a coconut. But when something's not a keli, it's totally off the map. Now people often ask, and it's a good question, why do you say a stone is not a keli? A stone can be used to hold down the pages. In the mountains, you could use it to open the door, keep the door open. Some camps or colonies, they use a stone the whole summer to keep the door open. So it is functional. Bishleim, eggshells, I understand why it's muktzah, but why is stone not a keli? Teretz, look at the words of the Shulchan Aruch. He warns this. Afal pishiru uyim lachasis by kli. It is roy, I know that. But as we see from the Mishnah Berurah, it's not enough to be ro'oi, it has to be oimid lakach. Mishnah Berurah and Sivkat and Ayin Gimel, the chala ro'oi lemidi, v'oimid lakach, toiras kli Allah. And that line of Mishnah Berurah is priceless. There's a difference between ro'oi, which most things are ro'oi, I mean eggshells is not, but every muktzah, other muktzah, is typically has some use, but oimid lakach is the deciding factor. And the Mishnah Berurah's lashon, toiras kli Allah, you look at the Rav and Siv Ches, Davar she'ein toiras kli Allah, that's the deciding factor. So now we understand the difference between a sledgehammer and a simple stone that is a muktzah machmas gufa. But now you understand a different part of our sugya, and that is, let's say you decide you want to use a stone every Shabbos to hold down your page. So that's the sugya, it's a big sugya to share for itself, and that's the sugya being miyachet something. The Shulchan Aruch devotes 5 sifim, shunches sif chaf through chaf hey. Now, miyachad, it's not like miyachad yichud, you have to have some type of a magical effect. The point of yichud basically is you are giving the keli what it doesn't have. And that is you're giving it a shem keli. The stone is functional. It's roi, but it's not oimid. And by yichud, you're giving it what it needs. And that's the way you make it into a keli. Now again, it's a share for itself, but just letting you know, the best way to miyachad something is you make a maisa. The Shulchan Aruch early in Shin Aleph, Sif Lamed Beis, and the Ramah actually, the Ramah says if you have a coin, we'll soon see a coin is typically muktzah machmas gufay. But if you bore a hole in it and attach it to a necklace, so now it becomes a keli. You did a maisa of permanence that makes it into a keli. So the point is, you gave it what it was needing most, you made it into a keli. Now, this coin not only is mutlat gufa mekaymai, but it's muti even michama l'tzel, because this becomes a kli heta. Now, what's not so simple is when you don't do an actual maisa, but you decide to use it. Lav dafka, you have to make a verbal declaration. A mental decision is also enough. But from the Shulchan Aruch is kemat b'furish, it has to be something that you miyachid it la'olam, or some type of permanence. Just miyachid it just for once, or some people say, I'm miyachid all the stones in the bungalow colony just in case I'll need it. That's foolish. It doesn't work. You can't make a keli. In fact, if you miyachid it to use once, it doesn't either help. That's why those that throw stones by the Afghanis and Eretz Yisrael, it doesn't really work. Maybe it's a gather of Esed Leichalais to say, I'll leave that to the Lomdim. But the Maisa, it doesn't help. Only once doesn't make it into a keli. Now Lamaisa, but the Havana of it is a yichud gives it what it's most missing. Now let's talk a question that's going to affect hundreds of shilas probably. How do you define that key word of kli? We said the deciding fact is kli, shemalachta le'isam, is better than machmas gufay. What is the definition of a keli? Is toothpaste a keli? Is a liquid, like for example the dishwasher detergent, is that a keli? It's probably not totally in Hilchais Tum of a Tahara. So what then is the deciding factor that determines if this is a keli or not? So here we have an unbelievable yesod in the Gemara, which is very brief, but there's a lot to it. The Gemara in Shabbos, Av Kuf Chav Dal, speaks about a bakas. A bakas is a piece of wood. I'll say firewood, but lav dafka, but that's what it means. Wood that's used, let's say, in a fire. So the Gemara says that on Yom Tiv you're allowed to make a fire. So understandably, you're allowed to move wood. But Shabbos, you can't move the firewood because it's Muktza. Frag the Gemara, a very simple question. Why can't you move firewood? L'tzorech gufo mekaymai. Fragt the Gemara, davim shalachti le'isa, l'tzorech gufo tzorech mekaymai. I know that you can't use firewood on Shabbos, but presumably it's a keli. So why can you use it? L'tzorech gufo, you want to sit on it. Or mekaymai, you need a place where it's occupying. Why did you consider that muktzah that has no use at all? And for the Gemara, the key words, hani mili heicha de ikateres kliyala. When can something be mutter if it's a keli? So a keli can become a tzarech, a kli shevelachta le'isa. But heicha de lekateres kliyala loy. This firewood doesn't have a shem keli. Now, l'chayra, the Gemara rephrased the question. We asked, why isn't it mutter? Because it's not a keli. But that's my question. Why is a solid, functional piece of wood not considered a keli? So, Rabbi Shlomo Zalman, in the Ma'orei Eish, in the newsprint, that's Chelik Amid Tzadik test, says the Yesod that's going to impact the entire share. So, Rabbi Shlomo Zalman, when is something considered a keli? When something is used, pamim rabim, a keli, a hammer, a pin, a sewing needle, that has a permanent usage. If it can be used over and over again, it's a shem keli. But l'chol hapachas, he said, a keli is after you use it, it's still here. But a piece of firewood, after you use it, there's nothing left of it. Mashengin bekasta shmisha hainesrei fasa ubiyurei leichashi bekach keli kiven deika hanasai hu mei akaloyei. Kiloya means destruction. In other words, to put it bluntly, a keli is used. A bekas is burnt. A burnt item is not a keli. So we're going to use that word that he used, but we're going to modify it somewhat. Hanashal kliya. Again, kliya is chaf, lam, yud, hey, like kiloyain and mechala. Something that's used over and over is a keli. Something that's used once and there's no trace of it, hanashal kloya, kiloyain, doesn't have a shem keli. So a nice piece of wood is basically muktzah machamas gufo. So it's kli versus kloya, but that's the deciding factor. Now you might wonder, wait a second, food is also kiloya. We eat it, doesn't last. The terrace is pashin. When something is muktzah and you want to make it into ice muktzah, like firewood, then you need a kli versus kiloya. But food is the one of the items that never muktzah. You can even move shlo tzara klal. You don't have to make it into a keli. It's already food, and therefore the fact that it's kiloyin is immaterial. That's why also I will tell you a disposable item. Someone once asked me, why is that also an osher kiloyin? You use it, you throw it out. Terry says when it's a keli to start, it doesn't make a difference if it has permanence or not. Now let's apply this, and we'll try to go in order. Someone was supposed to put away the candles before Shabbos. He forgot. He's sitting on the dining room table. His wife was more than irritated. This is Shabbos day, a box of candles. Is there any heter to move candles on Shabbos? So let's give it the benefit of the doubt. Let's say he has a small table and a big family. He needs the place where the candles are. In other words, this l'chayra is a tzarech mekayme. In other words, when some people have a big table and a small family, but it's not Shabbosdik to sit at the table with Shabbos candles. So Moshe said it's more not Shabbosdik to move muktzah for no reason. If you don't need a place, so what Shabbosdik is follow halacha and leave it on the table. But let's say we're going to give him the benefit of the doubt, it's tzarech mekayme. The question is this considered a keli or not? So until today, why not? It's nice. But today we realize this might be a new example, and also clear. You light it and it burns down. And indeed the Marshal, quoted by the Shlo and Big Day Yesha on the Mordechai Shabbos Shin Tezvav, he speaks, Mama spells it out, Ner candle, Kuf Nun Daled Yud Lamed, is not mutter to be moved, it's a Gufo Mekayme. Why? Because it's not a keli. And this is also the shita of the Moktzia and our Simin on the Magram Sivkot and Yudches. Vadei ner shel chelev. It's ein taras kliyala. The lechazi lemidi kamayachila. And I believe what they mean to say is this is another expression of bekas. Avada, it's a physical keli, but its use is limited to one time and it burns away. And that's Hanoshel Kloya. Now the truth be told, there's another problem with moving a candle, and that's the famous sheet of the Balamor in Daf Samach Vav Mabez in the end of Masechta Shabbos. The Balamor says, Avada, you can move a Muktza L'tzorech Mekayme. But the prerequisite of that is, there has to be a foreseeable L'tzorech Gufo. For example, you're allowed to move a sledgehammer if you need the place where it's occupying, because sledgehammer is a keli. Varaya, you could use it to crack a coconut. So if there is a tzorach gufay, so then it's a keli. Once it's a keli, you're allowed to move a tzorach mekayme. But let's say something that has absolutely no tzorach gufay whatsoever. A good example is a candle. What are you going to do with a candle? So if there's no tzorach gufay, it doesn't have the function of a keli. It's functionless. It's like eitzim avonim. Zok the Balamor, when there's no tzorach gufay, there's no tzorach mekayme. Because the tzorach mekayme is a product of it being a keli, because the tzorach gufay. And that's why you saw the Chazon Ish in Memdal Yud Gimel, the Aruch HaShulchan, in Sif Chav Gimel, speaking about candles. Their problem is there is no foreseeable tzorach gufay. However, as early as the Magen Avram in Sif Katan Yud Ches, he says people say allowed to move a candle even shaloi l'tzorach gufay mekayme for any use. No, it's not true. You could only move a candle l'tzorach gufay mekayme. So he is matter moving a candle if you need the place. And this is followed by the Gedolei Achronim, the El Yerabah, Pri Megadim, the Rav, Mishnah Sharatzi, and early in Reish Ayin Tesiv Katan Dalid. And what's more convincing, the Marshal himself, who was the first to say a candle is Muktza, and there's no heta, he says, I have charata, and you could move a candle l'tzorach gufay mekayme. Now, the question is, why is it different than bakas? So it could be very pashit. A bakas, you didn't make it into a keli. You cut the piece of wood to a smaller piece. When you fashion a candle, you actually created it and gave it a shem keli. So the chilik is bakas is not just that it's kloya, but it never had a shem keli. There's another svara, and this is also the early Achronim explain. You know, in our minds, a candle is like a ceremony. You light it on their Shabbos or a Yartzeit, and it burns out. In those days, it wasn't the case. There was a light. They put a candle on, they learned, and then they finished it, and they closed it. So it didn't have a kloya. It was used over and over. And that's why Lamaisa, we can understand that a candle is a keli. It was made into keli, and it has multi-purposes. Today, a candle, you burn it out. Mechatesa. Lamaisa, you'll ask me, what's the tzorach gufay regarding a candle on Shabbos? So this I can only say what I learned recently. Someone asked me, and a child, I couldn't follow what he was saying. He sets the table, and he puts leichter, and he puts a candle, but he doesn't light the candles. I said, why? What about Ner Shabbos? No, we light Ner Shabbos and myself. I said, okay, why do you put candlesticks and a candle on the table if you're not lighting it? It's a certain ambiance, a certain elegance that it adds to the Suda. So I inquired, and how can they do that in fancy restaurants? They put candles, but not lighting them. Okay, a new minute. So what was his shayla? I'm very interested shayla. After he finished the Suda, he wanted to take off the tablecloth and change it. Can he move the candlesticks that were never lit? So we know a burning candles is a basis to the fire. The fire makes the candles muktzah. The candles makes the candlesticks muktzah. Candlesticks makes the table muktzah. But this is a plain old kli shemalachto le'isur. So l'chayre he would be justified in picking up this unlit candles and moving it off the table, because the candlesticks takes on the identity of the candle. If the candle is a tzorach gufay mekayme mutter, so too the candlesticks. So you live and learn, like say in America. But the ma'aseh, and I heard that is true, people do that. A certain elegance, you have candles. But if that's the case, we have found a legitimate, perhaps modern type of the tzorach gufay. Now the ma'aseh, the poskim say that the Mishnah Berurah in two places, in our sit in Shin Ches Lamed Dalid, and the Sharatzian in Reish Ayin Tesiv Katan Dalid, paskins like the Magen Avram, candles is a kli shemalachto le'isur. So although some take exception, anem and aleinu divrei Mishnah Berurah. What is milchayr muskam, if you have wax dripping that fell from the candles, even though it's a piece and has significance, but that is not a keli, that is dysfunctional. And like the Mishnah Berurah says, as you've got Lamdal regarding a burnt out wick, that is Muktza Machmas Gufo. It's taka functionalist. Next question. Someone left floating wicks on the table. A little cylinder and a small wick. So the Maisa, the big Chiddush is Rashi and Shabbos Chav Chesem Beis, Toises and Shabbos Daf Mem Zayin. Both say, and Magen Avraham quotes them, Mishnah Berurah quotes them as well, same Aaron Bakim, that a wick that they made in those days is not Muktza. It seems that they used and reused the same wick. So the svara is, first of all, you made the wick, you spun it, you took whatever material you used, you spun it, so you made it into a wick. And number two, it has multiple uses. So that's why the poskim say that a long wick is not Muktza. But a floating wick doesn't have that maila of reusing it. It was made, but it doesn't have the multiple function. So it's more probable to say that floating wicks, it only has hanoshal kloya, and perhaps that would be Muktza Machmas Gufo. Now I must mention on Yom Tiv wicks and floating wicks are not Muktza because you're allowed to use it. The question is, when you want to clean out the neiros on one day Yom Tiv, and let's say the second day, to prepare the neiros for the second day Yom Tiv, so there's no problem of achana because now it's second day, but it's Muktza. So there's a famous Kiva Eger. Kiva Eger says that since you light Ner Yom Tiv for Oichel Nefesh, to give the Suda more prominence, Kavod Shabbos, Oynik Shabbos, whatever it is, so you're allowed to move Muktza on Yom Tiv l'tzarech Oichel Nefesh. So moving the burnt out wicks or candle wax drippings, etc., that you have on Yom Tiv is muta als tilta Muktza l'tzarech Oichel Nefesh. Okay. Next question, another shalom bias issue. You left the box of matches out. Also disturbing Kedusha Shabbos. So Lamaisa, the Muskal Rishon would be, this is a small version of Bekas. It's a piece of wood, one use, and Taka of Shlomo Zalman in the same area age, a little later in Amud Kuf Ches, he says Gafrurim, matches, there's no Keli, no Teres Keli, it's very similar to Bekas, that it has one use. So this is what he seems to say. Now, Lamaisa, I do understand that a match has a mila over Bekas, that they made it. They made it into a small piece, and they put the tip on it. Also, if you want to be technical, the match, very often you don't let it burn till it burns out. So there is a remnant, a piece of wood. But Lamaisa, I did see the Tila LaDavid, in Shin Chav Bey, Sif Cotton Dalit. He speaks about using a shvebela, which is a match, and he says, Lamaisa, maybe we should be choishish that you might clean your teeth with it, but first you're going to have to whittle it, you're going to have to make it ill sharp, so you might make a keli on Shabbos. But he's not concerned about it being Muktza. Evidently he felt it's a regular kli shemalachta le'isur. But I did see the Chutshani in Chele Gimel Amud Pei Beis does say that this only has one use. Matches should be considered anashal kloya, and therefore it's considered Muktza. What I found interesting, that the Poskim discuss that perhaps we should say that it has a meleches heter to it. What is that? People clean their teeth with it, at least they used to. Some people clean their ears with it. So Shlomo Zalman in the Shmir Shabbos says perhaps that it has that use, that you could use it again to clean your ears or teeth. And until Tulei Shabbos, Amud 82, he says, in the Mari Eish, Shlomo Zalman was not machriya, but Shlomo Zalman told him that a matchstick is a kli shemalachta le'isur, and there is a tzarech gufo to clean your teeth or your ears, and therefore there's mutar tzarech mekayim. But Rabbi Yashiv in the Sefer Shalmi Yehuda argues correctly in Perigimel Sif Yud Aleph that nobody today uses matches to clean their teeth or to clean their ears. So it's roi, but it's not oimer. What's beautiful, I don't even know why Chazanish wrote this, but it's mamish custom made for us. In the regular, the Heilig Igreis Chazanish Heilig Beis Simon Mem Gimel, there's a letter, Ksav Yad it says, and I don't know what he's talking about. I mean, I don't know what his starting point, but he says that people have a different level of being sensitive, being mafunik, and he gives an example. And he mamish is based on our sugi. Again, it's a treat for me. He says if a person needs take a hammer to crack open a nut, so he does it. It's perfectly legitimate. He takes a hammer, cracks the nut. Nothing wrong, right? A little later, his son is very creative and takes a kerosene lamp and use it to cover the case of wine, so it shouldn't be giloi. So the father would yell at him. Now what's wrong? Use the kli shel machdis, and so did I. So Chazon Ish says in his very poetic way that the level of aninus hadas vis pankus is dependent on every single person. The etvois mashal echad, and this mashal. So he concludes by saying some things are done and some things are not done. Using a hammer to crack a coconut is acceptable socially, but using a kerosene lamp to cover your case of wine is just it's not right. I think today a person starts cleaning his ears with the matches in a stickle of chayfetz chashud. So l'maisa, it doesn't seem to be the normal thing. So perhaps we should say that a match today, for two reasons, might be muktzah. Number one, it's an ashal kloya, and number one, there is no foreseeable l'tzarech gufo. Used matches, all agree. Shir Shabbos says it also in Perek Chaf Haramem. That's already like a shivrei keli, even if it holds a keli, but now it's functionless, and that avada is muktzah, and you can't be moved because once it's burnt out, it has no purpose, and no one uses it to clean their teeth. The person left out the olive oil. People use shemen zayit. Oh, that's much better because olive oil is an oichel. That's possible. The question is the shemen zayit pomace that they sell today. So the truth is, I did my inquiries. To my knowledge, it's not poisonous. You could eat it. It's just not as sterile. It's not as better quality. But I would guess that the pomace olive oil is not worse than raw eggs. Raw eggs, we say, is not muktzah because it's still edible. So maybe we'll say this oil, even if it's not shemen zayit, would be roi b'shas atchakak upon him, and therefore would not be muktzah. Now, someone asked me, it was during the summer, last summer, but the truth is, again, in the city also, either city or a camp, he had a bag of charcoal, barbecue charcoal, left it on the porch, and he needs the place where it's occupying. Can you move the charcoal, the use of barbecue? So it's interesting that this is mamish our sugya. L'chayra, this should be a form of bekas, because bekas burns, and this also used for fireplace. But it could be the redeeming factor is that the bekas was made. You have to realize that they make charcoal. By making a fire and stopping it in the right time, that piece of wood becomes coal. That's the whole issa of kiboy, which is a malacha tzricha legufa by a piece of wood. So the Shmir Shabbos quotes of Shlomo Zalman and Yud Gimel Pei Beis that efshe the b'chama mutar betiltel v'lo dami la'etzim uchashivi kepsila v'nikreis kelim. So he's comparing barbecue charcoal to a wick. Now to me it's a little strained of the connection because a wick has multi-purposes. You could use it over and over. Charcoal doesn't. But I think he's really relying on the side that you made the barbecue charcoal, you fashioned it, and that gave it a Shem Keli. Now the Or L'Tzion in Chavav Vav has a raya, a beautiful raya, from a Rashi in Be'el Amid Beis. The Rashi says that Pchamim are Keli L'Tzarfei Zohav, for those that need it. So Rashi calls charcoal a Keli. So based on that, if it's a Tzarech Mekayimai, l'char should be Mutter. The only problem is, there's no Tzarech Gufo. Now the emphasis, although the Balamor insists that there's no heter, Rabbi Akiva Eiger quotes it, but Mishmur has not mentioned this factor, that if there's no tzarech gufo, there's no tzarech mekayimai. So if you want to rely on the steamers and Mishnah that you could move it, but minimally, in the best scenario, it's a kli shemalachto issa, doesn't have a tzarech gufo, and perhaps not a tzarech mekayimai either. I'll give you a beautiful shaila, neft, not in Hebrew, it's really a biblical word also, but in kerosene. They used to use kerosene to light, like we use olive oil, they use kerosene. So, l'chayra, kerosene is not a keli, it's a liquid. But here, the Paiskim say that neft, this kerosene, works wonders in getting off stains from people's hands. He comes Shabbos, and he has a stain, chatzitza. Or for tfilas nashim, this is a very commonly used a way of getting off a chatzitza. Neft somehow is a good stain remover. So the Paiskim say that l'maisa mitzad echad, it's an ashal kilin. You use it once. But then again, it has a very good tzarech gufo. And the fact is that you have to process it to make it into kerosene. So the Paiskim seem to be comfortable that might be enough to make it heter. It has a good use. it was made of keli, it's better than a log. Ayla ma'isa hanoshel keli, could be that's not the deciding factor. Once you made it into a keli, you bought it to have it just in case you need a stain remover, that might be a kli shemalachta le'isa, true. Now, I'm not going to say it's malachta le'heta to take out stains, because no one uses kerosene to take out stains. It's a secondary use. It's like a pot that's malachta le'isa, even though there's a heta to it. Now, if you buy kerosene as a stain remover, that zich would be a yichud. That's pashut. Even if you hold this muktzah, that would be a yichud. Yeah, that is Chai Adam holds that there's a problem of moichik. I'm sorry, but most poskim hold it's not moichik. What are you erasing? There's no lettering. There's no form. There's nothing. Good question. Now, next question: a group of tzarchei bayis. So let me tell you a chiddush. People, it's not a chiddush. It's pashut. Scoring powder. We call it Ajax, but Ajax is a brand name. I'll call it Levers. Okay, Lever scoring powder, which is basically a powder that you use on a countertop. So people think it's the worst muktzah. I don't see why it's muktzah. You're allowed to use scoring powder as long as no mamachik. If you put a lot of powder into water, maybe that's lush, but you're using it moderately. So why is it muktzah? Now you'll say, what do you mean? But it's hanoshel kilit. True. But if it's not muktzah, what's the chisar? Rabbi Yashiv in the Sefer Shalom Yehuda Tes Gimel, he says scoring powder is not muktzah because it's not an issa to use it. The fact that it dissolves in water, so that's not the issa mamachik. Now, a more of a tricky issue, you left out the dishwasher detergent. As those that have a dishwasher, so there's a special detergent that you use to fill the dishwasher, and you put that on and it goes. So avad, I know that the dishwasher detergent is used in conjunction with a dishwasher, which might label it a kli shemalachta le'issa. But then again, even in the worst scenario, it's malachta le'issa, you could use it on your dishes for Shabbos. Now, it's a little more concentrated. Okay, use a little less, but it definitely can be used beheta. Now, I'm not going to say it's a malachta leheta for that because no one buys detergent for dishes, but it's a malachta leissa that has a tzarech gufay. Once it has a tzarech gufay, it also has a heta of tzarech mikayma, and that's the chayir pashit. You left it out. You could move it the tzarech mikayma if you need the place. Now, if it's just disturbing, so then that's a difficult shayla. Now, more of a shayla is the laundry detergent that you use when you wash laundry. So the emphasis that has no tzarech gufay at all, because you can't wash laundry even if you don't use a washing machine. Merely shiriyas is el kibuset. Now, I asked around, and it seems that there's really technically, it's not terrible to use the laundry detergent to wash dishes. But that's, it's like metalamdis. But lamaisa, it has very harsh chemicals. It's not advisable. It's not recommendable, they say. But it's not going to ruin the dishes. But lamaisa, it's not oimer lakach for sure. Maybe it's roi, but no one typically uses laundry detergent to clean dishes. So that would be a case of a klisha malachta le'isa that has no tzarech gufay and perhaps no tzarech mekayme. But besides that, this is anoshel kilim. Anytime you use it, it cannot be reused. So we should treat that like a real muktzah. Now then I saw Rabbi Shlomo Zalman originally held that chayme kvisa, which means laundry detergent, is considered klisha malachta le'isa, and he has a tzarachin if it's mutter. So someone wrote to him, actually this is in the Sefer, Ma'or Shabbos Chele Gimel, Michtav Lamadal. Someone, the Mechaber wrote to Shlomo Zalman, the Rashiva was mistapik about chayme kvisa. So I want to know, he says, what's the suffix? L'chayra, it's not a keli. And when it's not a keli, there's no heter tzarech gufay mekayme. And he has a beautiful raya. And his raya is Mashvus Yakov in Chelik Bey Simon Memhei, that poison, mouse poison or insect poison, they have these pesticides. Can you move it to tzarech gufay mekayme? So the Mashvus Yakov says no, it's not a keli. You can't eat it, you can't use it, it has no usage. So the chayra, he told Shlomo Zalman, this laundry detergent has no use whatsoever. And Shlomo Zalman, with his great aniva, says, Tzodek, you're right, you have 100% right, it doesn't have a shem keli, and he says, now I believe, he says, that this would be like a bakas. It doesn't have a shem keli. Once it doesn't have a shem keli, there's no heter tzarech gufay mekayme. So he equated a laundry detergent to a mouse poison that is not a keli. It's muktzah machmas gufay. with halacha eyes in a mouse poison or a laundry detergent, you see eggshells as the same lack of keli. So this is what Rabbi Zalman believed to be the right psak. Okay. The next common Erev Shabbos question, you left out the shoe polish with the brush. So let's talk one at a time. So the Maisha, no doubt about it. Mishtabur and Shin Chav Zayin, Sif Katan Yud Beis, and again in Sif Katan Tez Zayin, says twice that polishing shoes can involve two Isurei Torah. Number one, if you use the polish, a semi-solid, it's memachik, memerech, for sure. Plus, the actual coloring of shoes, dyeing of shoes, is a malach of tzviyah. Mr. Brewer quotes a Tveres Yisrael, if a guy polished your shoes, you can't wear the shoes on Shabbos. I mean, if they were wearable before, so it's not enough. But shoes that were unwearable and now are polished, this is a malach deraisa. So if that's the case, minimally, shoe polish is a klisha malach deraisa. It's used in conjunction with two Isurei Torah. The only question is, maybe it's worse than that, since there is no foreseeable l'tzorach gufo. The ma'isa, there is no way to use it. Plus the fact is, hanoshal kilim. And that's probably why that the Pais can say this should be considered Muktza Machmas Gufo. There's no usage, and there is no, it's hanoshal kilim. Okay, you did create it, but again, if the fact is, even if it's malachti le'issa, there's no tzorach gufo. And there should be no tzorach mekayim. Now the brush, lemaisa, the brush is a keli, no doubt about it. It's not a noshel kili, it's a keli. The problem is there any tzorach gufo that's possible from a shoe brush? And we'll soon see a hat brush you could use to clean a table. But most people don't use a shoe brush to clean a table. So you come to the machlekes, the Balamor and the other Rishonim, which the Mishtabur seems to be makel. I did see, again, I told you earlier, the Poiskim, the Archashulchan, the Kiveig is Machmer. So now we understand how to identify it. A beautiful nafkamina would be if you use liquid polish. Liquid polish does not involve the issa of mimareach, but it does involve the same issa of tzviyah. So liquid polish is definitely a malachte le'issa. There is no meleches heta, and perhaps the fact that it's in a liquid form, it doesn't have a shem keli. So we should treat a liquid polish like Muktza Machmas Gufo. Like we said earlier, like the clothing detergent. A toothbrush is associated with Isser. Moshe in Chelik Av Kuf Yud Beis, that in a toothbrush it could be the Isser of memachek if you use polish, and of course chita from the bristles from the fiber. So a toothbrush is a malach tel Isser. However, Moshe himself concedes if you want to brush your teeth and use no water, it shouldn't be a problem. Maybe over the chol, you have a special toothbrush, fine. But essentially, a toothbrush can be used beheta. Now, I am not inferring that a toothbrush is malachte leheta, because you could use it without water. Because the toothbrush was not made to use without water. That's a Shabbos toothbrush. So, Lamaisa, it's like the Rashba's Yisoid B'Alach in the beginning of Shin Ches quotes it, something that has multi-purpose, but it's made for Issa, like a pot, is malachte lehissa. Pot has many heta functions, but it's not made other than to cook. So a toothbrush will be a kamish malachte lehissa, but that doesn't really make a difference. Once you understand that a toothbrush has a maleches heta, so then you can move it to a kuf mekayim. You want to use it to brush your teeth beheta, you want to use it because you need the place. The only nafkamina would be if it's occupying a place you don't need, it's right in the middle of the dining room table, it's very inappropriate, but it's not, you don't need a place. So if we would consider it a klish malachte leheta, you can move it mecham l'tzel. But since it's malachte le'issa, it has to be within the guidelines of tzarach gufo or mekayim. Now toothpaste, lemaisa, we can't use because of a machek. It's a klish malachte le'issa, but maybe it's not even a kli. Maybe it's the same problem of a hanoshel kilim. Now even bubblegum flavor that some kids eat, but it's not made to eat. So the Maisa, we should understand that a toothpaste should be a kli, shemalach l'issa, if he's very generous about it, which has no tzorach gufo, or maybe the fact that it's an oshal kliya would make it a Muktza Machmas Gufo. Silver polish, also left out Erev Shabbos, is a semi-solid. It's enough of a cream that there is memachek. There is no tzorach gufo whatsoever, and that should be kept in its place even if you need the place. a mop or a sponge that's left out. So again, it's very, it's disparaging Kedusha Shabbos. The mop is there, the sponge is there. Like, it shows you a little, a little late. But Lamaisa, let's identify a sponge and a mop have one big mile. They are bona fide kelim. A sponge is a kelim, a mop is a kelim. Now, Lamaisa, let's give it the distinction of a kli shemalachta le'isur. Once you say that, and you need a place that they're occupying, it's mutter to move it. But the big question is, how can you use a sponge or mop on Shabbos? Teretz, if you know halacha, there's no problem. Let's say you have a small spill. So you want to take a dry sponge and wipe up the spill. Or a small spill on the floor, and you want to use a dry mop to wipe up the spill. That's perfectly mutter. Who doesn't know a sponge and a mop is an issa deraisa of schita? So slow down. What does schita mean? When you wet a sponge or wet a mop and you want to use it to clean a stain. So what you're really doing is you want to get the water that's embedded, absorbed in the sponge and mop onto the floor that facilitates the washing of the floor. That's schita. But here you're absorbing the spill, you're going the opposite direction. You're going the heta direction. You're absorbing, not expelling. Absorbing is not schita. So in a sponge and a mop that's dry, and a minimal spill, and you're not going to be choishish that you're going to squeeze it out to do it again because it's a very small spill, that should be a legitimate tzarech gufay. So once we establish there is a foreseeable tzarech gufay, it will be mutter tzarech mekayimai as well. Now, this is because, again, the fact that it's a kelim. The same halacha applies to a hat brush. A hat brush is also one of those things left out when Shabbos comes. So brushing a hat from dust could be a malacha deraisa. The Shulchan Aruch Shin Beis Sif, the Ramah Sif Aleph quotes the shita that Hamanair from Avak is also malacha deraisa. Fine. But then again, unlike toothpaste, a hat brush is a real kelim. And there's no doubt about it, you could use a hat brush beheta. You could wipe a table, clean a table that has crumbs, that's not embedded in the tablecloth. It's like feathers on someone's jacket, that's not malabain. So it's mutter to use a hat brush in a oifen of heta. You could brush off larger items that are not, again, doesn't make the tablecloth dirty. It's not like a stain or dust that's embedded in the fiber. So there is a foreseeable tzarech gufay, and huadin it's mutter l'tzarech mekayimah. Contrast that to the hat, to a shoe brush that people don't use it on the table. It doesn't have that function of a heta. A stick of deodorant is Muktza machmas gufay, and teretz pashut, because using that is memachek, and there is no foreseeable tzarech gufay, so it's at least a klish machla issa that has no tzarech gufay. Could also be that its function is an oshal kila. Chapsticks or lipsticks, or Moshe in Chelik Aleph Kuf Yudalet, that using lipsticks could involve two malachas deraisa, memachek and soiveya, even on a human being. So that makes it at least a malachta le'issa, and perhaps because there's no function, would give it the distinction of Muktza machmas gufa. Vaseline is tricky, because Vaseline is pashtus Muktza. But lamaisa, you could use Vaseline beheta. If you take a Vaseline and you smear it into the skin, that's memareach. If you take out with a finger and just dab it on to an area that needs the Vaseline, that's no issa. So lamaisa, there is a way of using it beheta. But the question is, what are you using it for? To put it on chapped lips, dry skin? That's the issa of refuah. That's pain relief. That's the issa of shikil salmonim. So lamaisa, we could say that Vaseline is a klish malachta le'issa, if it's considered a keli, and probably it is because it has a function. It was made. Although it's kiloi, but it has a function on Shabbos as well. So if you need it, let's say a gufay, it's mutam and huadin mekayim, but it has to be used beheta. Of course, let's say a person has a heta, he has very dry skin, and his mamish is mitztayer. So mitztayer could be like a choyl shem by sakana. Then you could use the Vaseline. The next halacha, nail polish and makeup, that's Shulchan Aruch Shin Gimel Chafei. That's the issa of tzeveya. So again, it doesn't have a shem keli, hanoshel kiloi, has no tzarech gufay, and there would be no het of tzarech mikayim. A little of a more tricky issue is a bar of soap, a typical bar of soap. So no doubt about it, Moshe says this, actually Mishnah Berurah quotes in Sif Cotton, Shin Chavav Lamed, he quotes at Tiferes Yisrael, using a bar of soap as opposed to liquid is a malacha of memachik. So it's definitely a kli shemalachta le'issa. But the question is, do we consider that like a keli or machmas gufo? So the Shmir Shabbos in Chav Tezayin, he calls it kli shemalachta le'issa. Apparently it was made into a keli. Now the question is, so good, what tzarech gufo is there? So this is unbelievable. The Ktsois HaShulchan, Bam Chaim Noah, in Kuf Chav Zayin, Sifkat Yud Gimel, and the Shmir Shabbos, Yudal Yuches, enhances it even further. He says you could use a bar of soap on Shabbos. You could take a bar of soap. This with Shmir Shabbos makes it even easier to work with. Take the bar of soap, put it in hot water in a kli sheni, and let the soap sort of dissolve, and now you have liquid soap. There's no bishul, there's no memachik. The Shulchan just says you could use it in water. V'cheinoi hagen, he writes. He lived in Yerushalayim. The Shmir Shabbos makes it more practical. You're not mamachik b'yadayim. The hot water, there's no bishul. Oy bazoi, there was a tzarech gufa. You could make Hamish Shabbos soap on Shabbos. What? Bubbles is not a Moshe's chumrah with Shabbos soap. You're right. But the Welt is soimach on those that hold that bubbles does not make it into mamachik, because the mice it's much more of a liquid than a solid. So once you have a tzarech gufay, there would be a heta of a tzarech mekayim. Now lemaisa, this soap is, believe it or not, better than makeup, lipstick polish, and silver polish, and nail polish, because there is a legitimate tzarech gufay. Mashal lemohadav adoima, Rabbi Yashav and Shalmi Yehuda Tes Gimel, you're allowed to move bleach on Shabbos. What use of bleach do you have on Shabbos? Because you could take off a stain with bleach. Again, not a stain of clothing, obviously, a stain on the hand. So once you have a foreseeable tzarech gufay, that might, together with the fact that it was produced, that might make it into a kli shemalachta le'isur. Now, the holder of the soap box, is not a heta to move that, and the soap will be moved agab, because the soap box has the same halacha of the soap. So if the soap is machmas gufay, so to that. If the soap is kli shemalachta le'issa, so the box is also malachta le'issa, you can move it to gufay or mekayim. Now, the Shalmi Yehuda also says shampoo. He's talking about even hair shampoo is not muktzah. That was a chiddush to me, because the mice you could use it to wash your hands. I mean, it's not like so yuchid for hair. So he's making it a kli shemalachta le'issa, l'tzarech gufay, which is foreseeable. Now another interesting, if it's not, I don't, it can't be used at all. Okay, then if not, not. But he's saying it has a legitimate use of tzarech gufay. Now another shalom bayis question: a person left his wallet with a lot of money out someplace where the children are going to play with it, or left it in his backyard. The kids, his wife's not happy that he was mafka his money. So is there any heta to move a wallet with money or plain money? How do we identify the almighty dollar, like they say in America? So people say, yeah, money is machzor kiss. Okay, good joke. Some people say it's machmas miyus, the bali musa. Some say it's muktza machmas gufay because it's geltes blotter. It's like dirt. So after all the the musa, let's talk about tachlis. Money is a very intriguing question, because how do you identify paper money? Now I don't mean monopoly, but in a certain sense the analogy is not so strange, because what value does a $100 bill have besides its buying power or its use? But what value does a $100 bill have? How much is it worth? Not even lots of pitzachisa anymore. It represents a way of getting something. But can you call it a keli? What kind of keli is it? And the Paiskim seem to go in that direction. A piece of gold inherently has value, has a use. I don't know what you can do with it, but if you use it, we can understand it's a keli. But money, whether it's coins and certainly bills, why are they different in function than monopoly money? You could gain something with the money, but it's not a keli. Biasa bia, biasa gishmak. If you take a quarter, a nickel, okay, make a hole in it, you make a necklace. That's not muktzah, because you made it into a keli. But money in any form of it, if it has basically functionalism. And listen to a mechaba in Shulchan Aruch, in Shin Yud Siv Zayin. Zok the Mechaba, Mita Sheyesh Ala Mois. You have money on a bed, and if you put the money to be on the bed, Ben Hashmashais, Zok the Mechaba, not only is the money Muktza, but the bed is also Muktza the entire Shabbos. Because Ben Hashmashais, the money, the bed became a basis to the money. Zok the Mishtabura, why is money Muktza? Zok the Mishtabura, matter of factly, just like the money is Muktza, Machmas Gufoi, the din bosses ka'oisa mukchalab. The kivan the mois have muktzah machmas gufoi. That's also even tzarach gufa mekaymai. So too the bed. In other words, had you have a bosses from malachto le'issa, you put a hammer on the bed. You can move the bed with tzarach gufa mekaymai like the hammer. But since this is the extreme muktzah machmas gufoi, and the bosses, the bed takes on the identity of the muktzah in this respect. So they both are muktzah entire Shabbos. If a guy steals the money, you still can use the bed. Because the bed was muktzah bein hashmashit. As I state in the Shulchan Aruch. So it's not that money is blotter, and that, but the fact is that it's a functionless keli. I mean, it's functional, but not from its actual chefs itself. And this is why the poskim seem to agree that money is classified as a muktzah machmas gufa. So again, the analogy to monopoly is not bad. It's pretty accurate. Now, lamaisa, if you put left money on a bed, typically the bed's not muktzah, because bosses only takes effect when you put a big kavana to be there. If you forgot to move it, you left it by mistake, it doesn't have a shem bosses. So if you did leave money on your bed, you could shake it off, tilt it begufay. The Mechaba says the fairish, you're allowed to move muktzah with any part of the body other than the hands. So even though the Chazon Ish was not, did not accept this heta, but it's the Mechaba, and all paiskim, you can move muktzah with gufay, you can kick the money off. So the problem with the bed will not be a problem if it wasn't the Shem bosses. In those days, they made the bed, for some reason, a bosses for the money. Now, the problem is, a wallet that was left outside, either wallet or money outside, and you want to bring it in, it's going to get stolen. So, there's no heta of hefset in this case, because it's muktzah, it's machmas gufa. Even had you called it malachto le'issa, there wouldn't be a heta, because only had to sell gufa mekaymen. So lamaisa, if it's a small amount of money, so our Zaydis gave up more for Shabbos. If it's a large amount of money, you could call a guy to move the muktzah to shvus b'makayim hefset meruba. But one thing I would say, that the wallet has the same problem like the money. You'll say, well, the wallet's a keli, so I'll move the money, I got the wallet. Terry says, no, the wallet is a basis to the money. It's a tuffle to the money. Now, that's why you could understand something else. If someone has an empty wallet on a table or in a bed, there wouldn't be a problem. Because an empty wallet is really klisha malachto le'issa. Mechaba says, a kiss that's miyuchad l'mois is treated like a klisha malachto le'issa. That's funny. Because the money is considered, you use it to buy something. So even though it's machmas gufay, but the money has the identity of an issa also. So the wallet is a klisha malachto le'issa. Once an empty wallet is malachto le'issa, you can move it to Yakov mekayim. The problem only is when bein hashmashais there was money in the wallet, so it became a basis to the money. So an empty wallet is a regular klisha malachto le'issa, which can be moved to Yakov mekayim. The problem which happens on Shabbos typically is that a person finds money in his pocket. Now what should he do? The money is the same muktzah machmas gufa. So the good news is that the clothing does not become a basis to the money, because it's shachach. But how to get the money out of his pocket? So the best way is you stand on your head and somehow the money comes falling out. But that's not, of course, not easy. But the really best thing is chayav mash b'kisai erev Shabbos and. But let's say he didn't. So then you have to get it out of the pocket without touching it. Tiltul min atzad, you'll move the pocket, invert the pocket. So once you're talking about an indirect muktzah, l'tzarech davar muta, to have to wear your clothing, so that would be a heta, but again, l'chatchila, we should avoid that. Now I'll give you two other examples of muktzah regarding money. Someone has a bus ticket, okay? Whatever, he pays $50 for a ticket to go to wherever he has to go. So he gives a ticket and he gets on the bus. How would you identify a bus ticket? So I think it's pashut, it's not a kli. It's a tiny piece of paper that's not even worth a shvektabik. So what then? It's worth $50 if you show it in the right place. Right? Machmas Gufo. That's money. That's really money. We're more enamored by money because it's, the almighty dollar. But money's the same thing. It's a bus ticket that happens to be, it's legal tender that you can use any place in the world. But it's still not a functional kelim. So that's why the poskim say that example would really highlight, I think, the side of money. Another mashal, a beautiful mashal, although I can only say it's Zechreinu Levracha, but it's a great mashal. If you remember in Eretz Yisrael, at one point they had asimon. Asimon was a coin that was used for a phone call. It fit in, it was like, it worked to activate a phone call. So when they had it, that could be more of a kelim. It sort of connects with the phone and makes it ring. So that's not like money, but the problem is that asimon has no tzarech gufo. So even if you call kli shemalachta le'issa, it would be without a tzarech gufo, so there's no tzarech mekayim. Poison, the Shvas Yakov I told you said in Chelik Beis Memhei, poison for insects is Muktza Machmas Gufo. Repellent, however, in other words, there are two types of sprays out there. There's one that officially kills the bugs, so that's taka like a poison. That's Machmas Gufo. It has no, it's an oshel kili, it's not a kelim. But let's say you have an insect repellent that basically scares off the insects. That's perfectly mutter. In fact, Mr. Brewer says an interesting chiddush. If you have a fly swatter, can you use it just lahavriach hazvuvim? So the mechaba in shin ches mem ches, you're allowed to use a manifa, which either is a fan or a fly swatter, to scare away the bugs. So Mr. Brewer, lamaisa, this mavriach might be a fly swatter, and therefore it's muktzah. Fine. So what? It's klish machlisa, the tzarech gufo. So once it's tzarech gufo, this tzarech mikayim. Medicine is a share for itself, but one point I must mention. Medicine, lefi pashtus, is a bona fide example of muktzah machmas gufa. Person has medicine, heart medicine. He has no heart condition. He has the yush mazeda. So why is that not muktzah? You can't eat it. It's not a kelim. It's totally functionless. L'idach gis is someone that takes heart medicine on a daily basis. So for him, he's miyachid it. He bought it, he got it, whatever it is. But to someone that doesn't need medicine and move medicine out of the way to get to something behind the medicine, that's taket problem of muktzah. Unless he uses it on an occasional basis. So buying it would be the yichud. Someone has children at home, so he has medicine just in case. Maybe that's the yichud. Or a shul has a gemach of medicine, that the miyachid it for use. Question, someone came to his porch Friday night to make kiddush, and his children disappointed him once again. They came from the swimming pool and they threw the bathing suit and the goggles and the tube onto the porch. How do you identify those three items? So the chiddush that everybody seems to agree, it's hard to understand, but a bathing suit is not a malachta le'issa. A bathing suit is malachta le'heta. People wear bathing suits. So you can even move it when it's not l'tzarech gufo mekayim. And it's identified as a kli of a beged of heta. The goggles, however, is malachta le'issa. Now someone said, what do you mean goggles? I have prescription goggles. I said, would you come to shul with prescription goggles? But it seems that he wears them. I don't know how he wears them. But that's the chara kli of malachta le'issa. And the tube is the same, malachta le'issa. So if it's tzarech mekayim, then if there's a foreseeable tzarech gufo, then there's a privy heta. And last but not least, I just had it this Shabbos. Someone asked me, he saw on the street here, actually in Flatbush, a mezuzah laying on the ground. Someone was bringing it to Seifer to check, so it was in a bag. He says, show the Rav. Laying on the ground, there was a mezuzah. So the a mezuzah is not muktzah. It's readable. You could read from it. And additionally, the fact that there's a bazoyin of a Seifer, of a mezuzah, so you're allowed to pick it up if it's within the Erev and can put it to a place where it belongs. But let's say there's a piece of a Gemara, and there's no reading that you could read from the piece, but it happens to be shaimos, it happens to be the top or bottom part of the page. Is that mutter to be moved because it's shaimos? We know it's shaimos. So in the Orchos Rabbeinu, in Chelik Alf Amud Kuf Mem Beis, Reb Chaim Kanievsky is mayor that is walking with his heilige father, the Stipler, and the Stipler said, oh, this shaimos, pick it up. So he picked it up. Tatuk Yehasen. It was Shabbos. He picked it up. He told the Chazon Ish. The Chazon Ish didn't agree because the shaimos like this type is muktzah machmas gufo. If there's a posik on it or a shtickle Gemara or Rashi, something decipherable, no. but the shaimos had nothing readable. So it's a machlokes, the stipend, the Chazon Ish, if you're allowed to move shaimos, als bezoyin. Now, all agree, if essentially it's muktzah. There's nothing to read about it. But this is the poskim, that later poskim also are divided. But the Lamaisa, the Yesod is, had it been readable, it would be a kli shemalachta leheta, good and talk to you.
B'shem Egan Shooter, like the biggest character of Smith for today's shir. Excuse me. Rabbi said we have a lot of across the time to the Stone Shul for hosting the shiurim all the years. I mean, like, Shua across the time I've been mishtatif in the campaign for the Neil Amor for electricity, for comfortable air conditioning, etc. The asking Rabbi Mor Klitnik is standing near the door. Please be mishtatif by an yofa. Als je kijkt naar van komen, we gaan je met elkaar zeggen dat ze gesproken de zaak is, is het zelf gegeven om te met de shenema, de nooit gaf is dat man ziet kun jagdel ter bejaarde. Ja, dat is gaat is mee hebben. Nou, dat is allemaal gesproken van hem kan misschien kijken. Ja, je kunt ermee van rijden op deze zo bij alles man kan maar mee. Nee, dan kan we gaan als je als was een maas ben we allemaal maar mee. Ik zou dat we dan heel wat ambities zouden komen aan als we uit de was alleen maar Shabbos. Ik dan nog een zomaar aan beginnen met de vragen dan ga je niet meer weer geven. Kan gewoon dus maar weer halen we maar mee. Hey, ze maar af en smaak gaan we alleen ook koos zo maar mee. Ik zou nog maar weer zo alleen ook koos zo maar mee. Okay, boys, so nobody's muktzah. Everyone's welcome to stay with Gufo for the Sikha Muktza Machmas Gufo.
Just let's we learned today, Bez Hashem, we saw a big difference between Melachta, Le'issa, that's Muktza, Gufo Mekayma, because it has the key factor of Keli. Machmas Gufo is not a Keli and is totally restricted, even let's say Gufo Mekayma is us. Once something is a Keli, so you're allowed to move it for any purpose. But the question is how to identify a keli. So the difference between a sledgehammer, which is a keli, lachta l'issa, versus a stone or any useless item, that's not a keli. Of course, every item has use, but the difference is between ra'ui or oimid l'ka. When something is not a keli, l'moshel a stone, by being yachid to use from here on, gives it what it lacks most, it gives it the shem keli. It has to be a real designation, but that's the heta of miyachid. A bikas is not a keli because it's anoshel clear and it has no other heta function besides. I'm sorry. There the heta, it does have a use if you're sitting on it, but since it's not a shem keli because anoshel clear, when we have a food or disposable items, you don't need it to make into a keli, and therefore even though it's only anoshel clear, it's still of course not muktzah. Unlit candle, most places by Mekel to treat it like a kli shemalachta le'issa, and you're allowed to move it tzorech mekayma or gufay. Today, Lamaisa, the place can discuss that there is a way of using it beheta by just putting it without lighting it, so that might make it tzorech gufay as well. Wicks are not muktzah, floating wicks should be muktzah, machmas gufay. Matches is a machlokes if you're allowed to move it or not, but used matches are definitely not considered a keli. Olive oil and pomace oil are not muktzah, it's an achila. Charcoal, we treat it like muktzah, there's no foreseeable tzorech gufay. Kerosene is mutter because you get out stains. Scouring powder is mutter to use. Dish detergent, even from the dishwasher, is okay. Laundry detergent should be considered machmas gufay. Shoe polish and the brush are both considered muktzah machmas gufay. Toothbrush is kli shemalachta le'issa, there is a tzorech gufay. Toothpaste is machmas gufay. Silver polish is machmas gufay. A mop and a sponge is melachta le'issa. You can use it tzorech gufay for a small stain or mekaymai. A hat brush, you could move it tzorech gufay mekaymai. Chapstick, lipstick, all these involved mamachek is machmas gufay. Vaseline is different, it's mutter. A bar of soap is a kli shemalachta le'issa, tzorech gufay mekaymai. Bleach and shampoo can be used. Money is still machmas gufay, the wallet, depending if there's money in it. If not, it's kli shemalachta le'issa. Poison is muktzah, repellent is not. Medicine, if you knew you're using it, is heta, otherwise it's muktzah. A bathing suit, someone pointed, I should have mentioned, bathing suit that I said is not muktzah is when it's not wet. If it's very wet, and it's not Gomer de Adam, it was Muktza ben Hashmashais. Shaimos, if it's not readable, there are those that are makel to pick it up. Yes. Oh.